We engineered this crowd a little bit because we're so excited about the program. We invited some of the more prominent real estate developers, architects, and builders in the city to come see how it's done. Because what we really want to do is infect all of you with the enthusiasm of Sebastian and his team, and have you learn that this is not difficult, that it can be done, cost effectively, and that it can be done beautifully. And what is it, you may ask? It is to comply with the Passive House standard. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about this and then thank all of our sponsors and introduce Con Ed, our primary sponsor. The Exemplary Buildings program in Brussels, you may know, was a competition driven by incentives that encouraged the community to try to participate for several years. And over time, the building community got more and more used to the standard, understood it better, was able to use it more facilely, was able to use it in a way that was cost-effective and beautiful. And by the time that standard became law in Brussels, people had already been building this way for, I think it was 5 years. So the Brussels Exemplary Building Program led the way voluntarily to a building code change in Brussels, which was then easily accepted by the community. We are trying, a group of us, and perhaps the city too, are pulling together to try to imitate that success. And who better to tell us about it than Sebastian Moreno-Vacca and his team from A2M Architects. They are headquartered in Brussels. Sebastian founded the A2M firm in the year 2000. He's a professor at the University of Architecture at Brussels, has been there since 2007. He launched a magazine called Be Passive in 2009. And all of the projects his firm has done since 2007 either comply to the Passive House standard or are net zero. I want to tell you a little bit about upcoming events before I turn the mic over to Con Edison for a brief word from them. They are our sponsors in this and all events. Our next event here is on July 12th, where Greg Hale from NYSERDA will be talking to us about a program in the Netherlands that is able to inexpensively and attractively clad affordable housing. With him will be Tim McDonald from Onion Flats in Pennsylvania. He has very cleverly used a financing mechanism for affordable housing, which requires that those who are financing request performance metrics, in fact, require performance metrics. So the new affordable housing is being forced by his ingenuity into complying with some interesting EUI metrics that have not been in place before. Also, that's July 12th. Also coming up in New York soon is Energy Week from June 13th to 15th. It's NYEW, New York Energy Week. And the Passive House Conference is going on from June 13th to 14th. You can look at the New York Passive House website to see what those programs are. We are being co-sponsored tonight, or we're putting on this production together with our colleagues at Urban Green, at Building Energy Exchange, and at New York Passive House. This was an important enough content so that we all wanted to participate in putting this program together. I want to thank them all for their help. And of course, I want to thank Con Ed and introduce Paul Romano of Con Ed for their ongoing support of everything we do at the Committee on the Environment. Thank you.
Good evening. It's great to see a large turnout. This is certainly a fascinating topic that will be discussed this evening. I wanted to express my enthusiasm for this particular initiative. Con Edison is very pleased to be able to sponsor such an event. We, as many of you recognize, are evolving ourselves from customary kind of, as Laurie and I were just discussing, widget-based programs where we're incentivizing better equipment to more comprehensive integrated designs as represented this evening, and more focus on the built envelope specifically. So to the degree that we can support these efforts, we're very pleased. We will also be sponsoring the upcoming Passive House Conference in June as well, because we are very strong advocates of just these initiatives. So this is a quick contact information and a little preview, if you're interested, of a forthcoming website of ours, which will explain our programs. So thank you.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Pat, for the invitation. As you're going to hear, we are really with French accent, and but you're going to be used to it in a few minutes. We were supposed to dance here together because we're going to talk in duo, but the mic is fixed, so it's going to be more quiet, I think. Ah. Oh my God. Oh, yes. Oh my God. Well, I'm not going to dance anyway. After some drinks, maybe. So that's going to be, yeah. So we're going to talk together. Julie is an architect. She's one of the 4 partners of, we have a very tiny agency. We are only 17 architects. Recently, we joined venture with Julie Moscovich, who's here, FNA. She talks 3 months ago here on Passive House. And in the presentation, you're going to understand why we decided to join. Actually, we're not going to, for once, not going to talk to you about building physics and BTU and all these things. Maybe a little, but it's a bit boring. It's funny, but it's boring. So on the contrary, we're going to talk to you about very pragmatic and practical way how we have lived all this revolution in our country. There are going to be 4 parts. It's first, we're going to give you the context. How come that we could have a law where Passive House is now mandatory since more than a year? How do we live under these circumstances and so on? And then we're going to talk how we as architects or teacher at university or trainer for builders, whatever, how do we live and what are the new goals? What's beyond? And then we're going to thank a certain REM, you will see. So on the left, New York, on the right, Belgium. So on the same scale, you will see that we have a very tiny country. It's almost a joke, that country, because our country is even smaller than your state. We have half of your population. And if I point out on the same scale again, those silhouettes, you see you have 8 times more inhabitants than we have. Nevertheless, it's really a joke because we have a country with 3 tiny regions, and the smallest one has its own government. And everything what is decided on environment, urbanism, whatever it is, it's local decision with minister, president, and so on. But we used to. Another thing to give you the context, we don't have construction cost as good or as high as you have. In the US, this is New York, average construction price. It's a slide not coming from us, it's one of your company here. I suppose it's okay. So when you talk Brussels, we used to build classical building cost is $150 the square feet. So it's a bit like Dallas or, or Phoenix. Well, so here you can see in this country where we mix the 3 regions, all the passive house buildings. So there are so many that we don't count them anymore. They're even not certified anymore because if one of the regions is now normal. What is a bit abnormal, and it becomes also a study in Europe, how come that it happens there and not in other place and so on. Even if it's, honestly, it's all happened by accident, it shouldn't work, but it worked. So we see here the growth in only few years from almost scratch. We were one of the worst country in all Europe. And really, I promise you, no one was really green or no one wanted to save the planet, neither the government, neither nobody. But it worked. But the thing is, what happens is just in a couple of years with few programs, one is very known as Exemplary Building programs, as Pat talked about, we very quickly had more than 10 million square feet passive house building on any kind of destination, any kind of style, or is it new build or renovation? And we really see here, normally when we show that the other governments or the 2 other regions are very angry, because this is the proof that these are regions who had no politic at all. But never mind, this is the case of all the world, so it's okay. So we saw arriving in Brussels all kind of passive house building, where in the beginning, strictly like in Germany, I'm not going to be negative, but they are, okay? And very rapidly, we saw them, architects, or very iconic architects like Jean Nouvel, you know, these kind of stars, cool. They did passive house without knowing it, never mind. But they also help to push the boundaries of these passive house. They were not that boring or whatever. So we're going to talk about that. And there was a lot of consequences that we're going to go through with you. For example, that one passive house building on two cost less than a classical building. Yes, cheaper. How come? Normally it's supposed to be more expensive. Here, because we are now 2016, we see the evolution that those energy consumption of all the region, all together, we mixed new build, renovation and so on. Compared to 1990, we have a decrease. Last time we did the survey was in 2013, 14, we had like minus 16% decrease. Now we are a bit less than 20%. And this is despite we have a growth of population. So you see here the greenhouse decrease. And the funny thing, it was also completely unexpected because we always talk about that in Green Council, whatever, groups and so on. But here it happens again, it was a surprise that the jobs, the sector, due to those green buildings, whatever, has an increase, even in the deep moment of the crisis. So after we did the survey, because we did it with the region very lately, it was, oh my God, so it was possible to achieve those famous minus 20% in just in a couple of years. And this is only, you see here, the brick is done when the new government came with those grants and so on. So if it's possible there, it's possible everywhere. So now we are a bit more than the minus 20%. So it's one of the case studies in all Europe because they are spreading that model, passive house model, all over Europe. We are 28 countries, my God. So the good news was when the government, they came twice, and in 2011 they voted a law and they said, look, within 4 years, every building will have to fulfill passive house, complete passive house. If you don't, no problem, but then you have to quit the country, you go on another place, whatever it is. But the thing is, when they said that, they said, look, you have only 4 years to prepare, we're going to be ready, we will see. When it has been published, the law has been published, the year after, we were in 2012, it was a catastrophe. All the sectors came back, and Architects Federation, builders, developers, everyone said, come on, it's going to be the end of the world. You cannot imagine you are out of the crisis. No one is going to survive. It can't be. We're just going to have but extra costs. Architect will not be able to make nice composition and so on and so on and so forth. So it was really the end of the world. So what we did, 1st January 2015, we went here and there and we took a picture in front of the main administration of the region to see, is there going to be strike? Is it really the end of the world? And there was no one. But of course, it was freezing in the morning. And nobody, no one. So all that for that. So, and now we are more than a year after. We have a new government, new minister. They make a study. Was it okay? Do we have to keep the law? And at the end, no one cared. Yeah, there are still people who didn't understand and will never understand. Okay, so what? But mostly, we discovered now, today, okay, it's nothing. After all, a passive house is just a building. It's not an Excel file. It's just a building. Yeah, it's passive house. Yeah, okay. Wonderful.
Okay, so thank you. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do as architects in our office, and also with Julie Moscovitz here of FNA. We are a regular practice of architects, and we design buildings. You see housing building, embassy, office building. But apart from this, you see all those buildings. The specificity of all of them is that they are just passive house. So each one of them here, even in retrofit or office building, are passive house. So we are not a regular practice of architects. I mean, we have the design and build department, and we are working on project. We are designing all the details, and we have construction site and stuff. But we also have to, we thought about integrating directly all the research and all the engineering that normally any normal practice will share to another engineer. So we have this overaxe of research and development that we are doing in intern. So directly with all our architects and stuff, we have thermal engineers, because one of the things that has changed with passive house building is that you can't be a star architect and just create a design and then lend it to some engineer that will try to fix it with system, technical design, heating, cooling, lighting, because it hasn't been in the design. So we had to really work on the envelope, work on the architecture to get it warm when it's too cold outside, and to work on the light, work on parametric design. And so we had this other research and development acts on our office. So with a D&B, R&D, what else then? The R&B. Actually, I still won't dance, but I'm in charge of the R&B. We called it relation and branding, but it's more about the communication, because what's really important and what has was the winning part of the Brussels exemplar was the communication about PassiveHouse, about our experiences. So we are really into the open source and to share our experience, and it's actually what we are doing here. So it was through some magazine. Sebastian talked about the book Be Passive, the book also we did, and we had different media, communication, films and stuff. So here is the stuff. And so it was a little bit, you see the team there, a little bit red. It was natural for us to join with FNA because maybe, as you know, FNA was Giulio Moscovitz was the architect of the first passive house building. Maybe you're not familiar with thermographical images, but you see all those buildings, they're red, they are losing energy, they are losing warmth, and this little blue one, it's Giulio Moscovitz ones. So we decided to come to New York and to see a little bit what's it. Yeah, you can applaud there. And about the specificity also about our office in Brussels, one was communication, and here you see she had made also a book, The Greenest Home, and at first we've seen this book and we thought, okay, this is really nice, this is a really nice book, and then right now we are like joining and trying to have new projects here in New York. So actually we are not building just in Brussels. There is a lot, you see that we are doing a lot of new building, retrofit and stuff, but we are also doing projects in other climates, and we will talk a little bit about that. And we have some projects in Kinshasa, Lisbon, Prague, and then we also in New York. But the main thing also is that we give lecture, conference, trainings for architects, because we think, okay, let's share all this experience we have in Brussels. So, okay, what is the cheapest energy? What do you think? Solar panel? Body warm? Yeah, Gandalf's magic? Well, actually, we think the cheapest energy is the one you don't consume. So the energy you don't use. So that's why all of our buildings since 2006 are passive house. And so you see here, from a normal benchmark building, we are 90% less of the consumption of the need of energy. And so here is the surface of our project. So it was sometimes very small project, larger project, and here is the sum of liters of coffee that we have to take to do the project. So you see, our first project were really hard. We worked a lot, but after a while, well, it's become easier and nearly effortless. So that's why that's all we are talking about in this presentation.
So in the 2-3 common slide, it's just to give you an information on what based we are going to give you what is following. So as teacher in university, I started 10 years ago, but Julie is also helping, and another partner also. The thing is that you have to understand, it's no university asks, oh, well, can you come and teach us passive house or building physics, whatever. No one cares of nothing. They just invite me, so I came and say, okay, why don't we show that? So easy. And so it's very cool. You can do everything you want. It was better to teach that than to teach them how to make, I don't know, chocolate building, whatever. But to say, okay, we come for it. So the thing is, very rapidly, very quickly, we the way we insource all these tools, all these, but also to play with them, because they're just games. It's too easy, really. We did the same with the student, and today the classes we have classes of 180, 190 students. So these are pictures we took 2 months ago. They had to deal passive house, typical passive house details that normally you have training, weeks training and everything. You need consultant to do that. They had an hour, every group had an hour to resolve one details, and they had to do it. And these thermal bridge calculation, they have 5 minutes to do it. If they cannot do it in 5 minutes, never mind, but then they better change and take another university. So it's okay, but don't stay here. The thing is, this year, 100% of them succeeded, 100%. Here, all these kind of trainings, actually, we start also while we help the government. I was the president of the Passive House platform, like Ken here. I don't know where is Ken, but I was the Ken of Brussels. So we did a lot of training, but not only we train the builders or designers, engineers, and so on, but very quickly we make association with the unions, local federation, architects federation, engineers federation, and then with some people from the real estate, even from the brokers. So it becomes really like associated trainings we did for them. So this training that we do also at school, we did it here in those training center, and we continue. And we train since a bit less than 10 years. Julie and I and few, we train a bit more than 1,500 people. And the thing is, because it was a bit unexpected, we helped and we work very closely with the government, with the minister and so on, to set all this program, how to come, that all the, to distress all these case, passive house and so on. So then that could have been voted. And also you have to understand that this association I was leading up to 2015, actually up to the beginning of the law, application of the law, we had more than 100,000 of mail, hundreds of thousands of emails, telephones, and so on. So the government not only invest by giving a grant, okay, cool, that's tangential, it's nice, but also invest a lot in communication, support, and so on. And it didn't work all the time, but mostly yes. And then we decided 6 years ago to launch a magazine, a quarterly magazine, which is here. We stopped now because, okay, now it's done, it's over. But the thing is, it's like all the rest. Every information is, you can still find it on internet. We have more than 100,000 downloads, and still people now continue to download. Of course, it's free. That was one of the main important things, that we share everything. Not our details. We show more projects from others than us. And then we end with that book. So that's something, because the moment you are now, we are at a key moment. We see it from the outside. Maybe it's going to be time to launch this kind of magazine here, so we will see, but we make a proposal. Maybe by end of the year, we're going to start Passive. We will see. The thing is because of the color, a bit sassy, related to the name. But we're going to be a bit pragmatic.
So, Sebastian, did you say actually that there is no extra cost in passive house building?
Well, did I say that? When people say passive house has a small extra cost, only 5%, come on, it's a bit like shy extra cost. They are right, absolutely right. But even, we can tell you, it's even worse than that. We had building, we had not 5%, not 10%. We had building, which was, our project was 250 extra costs, so more than double of the cost. And on the other hand, we also had, and it was a surprise for us, buildings where we had negative extra costs, but not -5, it was -20% extra cost. So, and that came on the same moment. So after a while, we were wondering, even in the Passive House Platform Association, how come that some buildings are cheaper than classic, some are much more expensive? What are all these factors? Where can it be? And to give you just an idea, I'm not going to come back to this building, but our very first Passive House building, we never had a client who came, oh, hello, I want to save the planet, I want to have a passive house building. Of course, certainly not, and certainly not in 2003, come on, please. So here, it was a competition we won. We have almost no client. The only client we have is here, Jean-Paul Putz and Christophe Dansbourg, who are here. We're going to show one of their project here. They are our only client. All the clients we have, it's not client, it's competitions, requests for proposals. So every year we do more than 15, 20 request for proposal. So here it was a classical request for proposal from the government of Wallonia, and they said, we want to build a school, the best design is going to be selected, etc. So they never ask nothing. So we did a passive house without telling no one. Of course, we're not going to say, oh, do you want? They say, what, passive house? Get out. So, and even to the builder, we didn't dare to say, look, this is a passive house. Of course, they ask us, well, you have to make mistakes. You put insulation, it's like a 1 foot insulation. They say, well, don't worry. And a triple plate glazing, yeah, don't worry, it's normal. And then they ask, yeah, but those membrane, those tapes, so they say, okay, that's again another architect's fantasy. The thing is, when we did that project, we did a call for tender or price call, and on 10 prices we received from very classic builders who had no training at all, because we didn't say nowhere, it's passive house. 9 prices on 10s were cheaper than what we have expected. So it's funny, because when we were in Germany, we learned that it's normal to have passive house, because some people, they're not all, they have like the neo-Protestant way that to be good, you have to suffer, etc. And here, it was what's wrong with you? Why are you cheaper? How come? Okay, it's only at the end that we said to the governor of Wallonia, look, actually what is almost here completed, it's called a passive house. And he tell us, okay, you can call it as you want. No. And I said, it's true, it's a brand coming from Germany. I said, okay, forget it. Okay, so it was like a first surprise.
We had also other experiences, and we didn't find out everything by ourselves. We had this relation also in design and build with builder, and here it's one very nice example. It was a request for a proposal by the city of Brussels, and it was a school and 50 housing in a plot which was very defined. The zoning was really strong, so we couldn't do much different proposal. And there were 17 entries. It was also with the builder and the constructor and the architects. And you see here, it's all the prices that they gave. When you enter, you have a submission on this proposal, you are engaged with a price. So it was not like architects saying, oh, it won't cost anything. So here you have the 17 entries, and you see the green one are the passive one. So we won the project, and we were one of the cheapest project of all. And you see, all the others were just low energy. So this was really interesting also to work with a constructor and to find solutions that are not just about architect and designing architecture, but also about pragmatic solution. How do you build a passive house building in Brussels with the construction method and material we had? So here is some photos of the project.
Yeah. We start straight away with cost, because some people might be interested in cost, of course. But in the beginning, we were doing like in Germany. They're okay. I'm never going to complain, of course. Come on, please. We will not be there if they will not be there. But instead of calculating in the beginning, okay, I have a building. I'm going to add an extra insulation. Of course, it's by 3 apples. That going to cost more than 2 apples, of course. But the thing is, when you do buildings, it's not working exactly like that. That's all we discover, of course. And instead of doing classicals, oh, this is extra cost for this, extra cost for that, we do it reversely. We have been looking, this is large-scale buildings, absolutely not passive house. When I say absolutely, it's very far from passive house. It's like 10 or 20 times more energy consumption. And you see in the average cost, this very large one, some are more expensive than average. These are all passive house. This is a zero energy building, so it's a bit more than passive house. We saw that on the average of day, also large scale, some are much more cheaper. This is one of ours. And this is not good, because we are paid on a percentage. So it's a catastrophe for us, really. One day we hope to have a very expensive one. But, and you see, we have also some more tremendously expensive. What we discover, and really, is not like witchcrafts. Absolutely, I don't believe really in witchcrafts, but it's very, very tangible, I would say. We discovered that there are recurrency on the facts. So here, This one is from Meyer. It's a German architect. It's very large scale. It's a justice building in Belgium, very large. It's a bit excessive, whatever, but nice design, why not? And of course, it's out of the box classical design. Of course, it can be just but extra cost. Here, it's a passive house from Baumschlager and Heberle. It's a 1 million square feet for BNP Paribas. It's a bank. They're not very like making jokes, really. But their headquarters, they're also the most expensive passive house we have now. They start now the construction, just start now. So both of them have a very dramatic design and so on. It doesn't mean for that to have low cost, you have to do just boxes with EPS. And it doesn't mean that. It's just that we see factors to come back. We did the same on affordable housing apartment. Again, on the left, normal buildings, on the right, passive house. Yeah, again, this is one of ours, my God. Yeah, passive house. What we discover in those, when we did the study to see what are the recurrency factors, that the influence due to the impact of a better envelope, of course, it's sometimes triple pane, but not always. So please don't believe always. When they said you have to do triple, yes, but not always. Not in a skyscraper. You can. It's funny and it's cute and nice, but not automatically. It's not that thick insulation, not always. But we saw that in most of this building, of course, the extra costs were due to a better envelope for 11% of the factors. Another part of the factors, it was when you change the system of construction, and this is what we did as everybody in the beginning, we just import Germans and even from Austria these details, way of doing. It's not that they're doing wrong, it's that they're not exactly like our workers used to do, our craftsmen used. When we import and you tell them, look, put the cellulose like that, put the membrane. No one have heard membrane before, my God. They had to put miles. Of course, when you change the way of doing, this has a much more bigger impact for 25%. So if you want to have a passive house building will cost the same price than normal, don't change the way they do. You just a bit enhance, that's all. Another thing we discover is when you share the risk, it's very funny. There is almost never extra cost. So that has more influence. It was like for 29%. Sharing the risk is like, as Julie said, when you do a request for proposal, it's not only designer, but designer with builder. If the designer is crazy, then the project is collapsing. Or if the builder is crazy, the project is collapsing. So you two we have to work together, hand in hand, like in the old times. When it works, it's not always working, but when it works, that has enormous impact. So we saw it doesn't mean that if you're just designers, we just lie and say, yeah, it's going to be a good price. Yeah, come on. You know how it is. It doesn't mean that, but mostly when they have all the lower price were done together. So we saw, that's a success factor. And the other thing that had more impact, this was for more than 30% extra cost factors was due to abnormal things. For example, in retrofitting, renovation, when you have asbestos or ground pollution, whatever, these are more impact. What does it mean is when we do competitions or request for proposal, whatever, and we try to have a lower cost as we can, we don't do that together, just like that. We have to be together. With the builder, we sit together with designers all, and then we see, can you, maybe the concrete or in the structure, in the steel, whatever, how to be as clever as you can. Because we gain much more with clever foundation, clever structure than in just the extra tiny cost of the envelope. Much more. And it's nice because this is what they all used to do. That's another thing. We have a lot of studies going in all directions. That's what a student is doing now. Today, he has been asking like 10, a bit less than 10 architectural practice. And this is the most, the less experience on the left, and this practice have the most experience in passive house. And it's funny to see that the one who have the most experience have regularly zero extra cost. The one who have no experience have a lot of extra cost. Doesn't mean that they're bad. It means that these, for example, they have never built a passive house, not yet. Even the law is there, but they expect to have extra cost. And here we see architects who have lower extra cost, sometimes higher. These are endorsing these kind of buildings, green buildings. This one they don't endorse, but they have to live with. Okay, why not? This one they're very against. Funny. So they're good friends. They're teaching also with me and so on. So they know that we're always together when there is discussion and so on. It's very funny. Okay, but passive house, because you all say passive house. In a word, what's a passive house without going too much? Maybe I said, okay. She don't want to talk BTU, a kilowatt hour per meter square. So, of course, there are those metrics, or imperial metrics, whatever it is. So, this is linked to, related to an Excel file or to another program, a WUFI, can be a dynamic simulation. Okay, it's that also. You just have to remember that compared to classical building, you have a decrease like more than 90%. Just by doing 3 stupid things. You insulate a bit more, you do a bit more airtight, and we shouldn't draw membranes because there are other solutions that came from the sector, not from us. And then you do a clever ventilation. Clever is ventilation where you have heat exchange, but that exists since, I don't know, 100 years ago. Maybe I'm gonna explain that story. So even my grandmother, she's not builder, but she can do it. Put more insulation, and the luck here, when you have air leakage, okay, you can put a membrane, okay, why not? But there are other solutions, and you put a heat exchange, and that's it. It's so stupid, really. You can also say that, look, if I have a passive house, the first time we did competition, very huge one, more than 350 housing, we're not going to start explaining, oh, it's kilowatt per hour, and I have a U value with a psi, lambda, and so on. Come on, forget it, the jury, come on. So we tell them, look, remember, if you have a passive house apartment, you're going to have a heat who cost as much as a coffee each month. Well, a Starbucks coffee, maximum. And if you misuse the building because you leave all the windows open and so on, maybe you're going to have 2 Starbucks. So instead of 1 peanut, it's going to be 2 peanuts. But it stays peanuts, maybe $10, $15 a month, maximum. The rest, that's details. That's for us, for builders. That's details. Another thing, when you do dynamic simulation, this is in degrees, but whatever it is, on the winter, summer period and winter, there is always heating, like there is always cooling. They just reduce really dramatically. What we discover well, here is a bit different, but when you have less than 40 Fahrenheit, then there is a need for local heating, partly. But the capacity is nothing. It's like it's not much more than an iron. Of course, it's another sophistication, but can be stupid or not, whatever. It's not more. But another thing we discover, it's when you want to go to zero energy, not CO2 neutral, whatever impact zero. I don't know what all that means. But if you want to have a bill, again, if I come back to my grandmother, I'm not going to try to explain her, but if I tell her, look, I'm going to give you a zero energy building, she's going to think, oh, I have zero on the bill. All the rest, it's you on the calculation. If you say zero, it's zero on the bill. So we did that to try. Can we do it where you have you have energy, but you don't pay nothing for electricity, for heating, and for cooling. Can we do it? So we did it. This is one of enormous extra cost. And we discovered that the way to go to a complete full zero, after we're going to talk autonomy, it's easier when you go through a passive house building. If you don't, good luck. So we're going to explain you, this is a very tiny affordable housing. They're over, right? It's done here. You don't see it, it's a passive house, and you don't see it, it's zero. So this guy paid nothing since 3 or 4 years, nothing. They're still alive, don't worry. But we had to put extra solar panels and all these gadgets, funny gadgets. What we discover is, even if we are a passive house, we had to fill part of the neighbor's roof. Even we are a passive house, so we have 90% energy demand reduction compared to normal. Even with this, we had to, so you see it here, these are photovoltaic, this is water. And of course, it's the same owner, we're lucky. So if it was not a passive house, if it was like a low energy, so it's not that bad, it's better than normal. It's like maybe a cutting of 30 or 50% compared to normal. So it's good. If this building want to go to zero, my God, we would have to fill, well, it's a bit exaggerated, really. We are tricking. Actually, we should fill the half of the plot width. It means that we discover very soon that if you don't do a passive house, you mortgage your investment. You cannot go forward. If you want to evaluate, I don't know, within 50 years, 100 years, or 20 years, I want to go now to zero or autonomous. How can you do it? If you're not passive house, good luck, good luck. Okay. The good news is there are so many tools, and when we practice that tools, they can be very crazy, you don't understand, but really, honestly, when we do this training and so on, we discover that compared to what all these young students use and so on, all these games, which is crazy, I even don't understand that, like terraforming and all this crazy thing, it's even easier than that. And there are so many free tools. The other thing what was very nice, it's for once, we can control on reality what we do on simulation. So you have the FLIR. FLIR is coming from here. FLIR 1, we are waiting it since years now. For $300, you can have a urothermography. It's not that accurate, but come on. You have a blow door. So you can test what you want. The biggest building has been tested, I think it's in England, it's 1 million square foot. So they had to use a lot of fans, but so it's possible. And there are other ways to make blow doors than just using fans. But the question is because, okay, that's all this passive house and you have to be protected because of energy and cooling and heating, whatever. But they're all tiny windows. Can we not put larger windows?
So actually, yes, we can. It's also good. So there is new component of passive house building, and so we discovered in 2003 when we began, if there was practically nothing in the construction, there was no system and implementation and material and windows and stuff. But now, actually in Belgium, it's less expensive to build passive than in Germany or Austria. And so here it's a little project. It's a housing project with 14 apartments, and we did with Jean-Paul Put, the developer, which is right here, and it's in Molenbeek. Maybe you have heard about Molenbeek, the attacks and stuff? Yeah, here, it's Molenbeek. And we have opened a museum just 2 weeks ago, works well. So you see here, it's a building with no extra cost. It was 0% extra cost, and it was 90% were sold in like 1.5 months. And you see, all the windows are really large, and you've got a very beautiful view of Brussels. And this city is quite nice when there's no attacks and stuff. So here it's another example. It's not our project, is another one, and you see all these big, huge windows. So passive house building have improved in the design and the development of the system and all the architectural components. Here it's also a residential building, and you see it's at normal cost in Belgium, and it's in construction now, and it's full terrace. You know, we can't say to a developer, okay, in your apartment, your window will be just 1 square feet because, you know, with the light and stuff. No, it's impossible. So we had to discuss with the developer of the project, and we just made it, you know. Once you're familiar with the calculation and the stuff, once you do it inside in intern with your architectural practice, then you can imagine whatever you want. So you see here it was full window, totally open, and normal studio. And even in retrofit, so here it's another building we are doing, which is renovated. It was offices building, but there is many offices in Brussels and not that much residential buildings. And so it's a retrofit, and it's gonna be a large apartment, and with, you know, it's called terrace. So if you have a terrace, you have to have a beautiful large view and enormous windows. So here you see some of the project and the elements. And it's clear that 10 years ago, maybe we would have thought, okay, but what about the energy loss and stuff? But now we can play, as Sebastian shows Counter-Strike, but actually we are playing with PHPP, and so we can do elements like this. And here it's real estate development, it's offices, and also it was no extra cost. It's delivered like 5 months ago, and yes, you know, it was also with a promoter, a big promoter, AXA Real Estate. Maybe, well, here, maybe you don't know, but it's a real huge, big promoter in Belgium. And here it's electrical union headquarters we did, and you see the windows, they are like 3 meters high, and it's here.
One thing again, when you see that, everything is done against passive house when you see that, because it's not compact at all. On the contrary, you have a cantilever and so on, full glass facade. Of course, it's a bit more complicated. You have to pass some hours, a bit more only, but then the building is going to be there for 100 years or 50 years. And of course, in that is an old one. When we said, look, we want to have like I have to convert 4 meters. Well, a lot of food, fully glass, triple pane, and so on. Of course, all the builders told us it doesn't exist. You draw something, and of course, it's because they said it doesn't exist that we found some who were there. So of course, it's a bit more tricky for overheating and so on, but you can do it. And the building, the image before, for example, the cladding, we have more than 2,000 thermal bridge. Yeah. So what? You can deal it.
And so maybe the question you're asking right now is, okay, there's a funny folks, European people talking about a passive house in Belgium, but what about a hot and warm and humid summer in New York and very cold winter? So we have examined the question.
Yeah, it's a good question. Of course, here is very hot in summer, very humid and so on, and very cold, of course. Now we start to used to it. And we would never have present you the coming slide 5 years ago. So what we did, so this is a Köppen classification. There are 2, 3 classifications worldwide for climate. It's an accident again, I'm sorry. There's an architect, it's called Samin, very known architect, iconic in Belgium. They did the polar station. So no one knows why Belgium has a polar station in Antarctica. Never mind, but it's kind of not a joke, so they're here. It's a passive house. Of course, they have insulation. It's not 10 feet insulation. It's maybe 2 feet insulation. But it's a passive house. Nevertheless, it's a passive house. This is what they said. I don't know if it's true. They said it's one of the coldest points on Earth. It's maybe minus 130 Fahrenheit. So if they were able to do that in such a climate, come on, do it in Fairbanks. It's just fun. But on the same moment they did that, just after, we won the competition for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It was in Kinshasa, so we are here. And actually the climate of Kinshasa, it's dark blue, so it's here. It's very humid, 95% all year long relative humidity. And hot climate. And it's the same that you have in Singapore, partly here in Central America, and it's coming a bit to your country. So solution, you can do it here, you can do it in all that tropical belt. And it's the Belgian and Netherlands embassy, they joined together. It's a bit like sharing embassies, okay, why not? It's like a funny concept. But anyway, it was a competition, again, request for proposal, designed and built. So everything has to be, it's under construction. So what we said when we presented the competition, we said, look, you, the government, you did on the coldest point on Earth a passive house. Okay, let's continue the story. Let's do it on the most tropical zone in all the world. And in Kinshasa, and really, if you can do it there, you can do it all over the world, really, my goodness. Yeah, so we use tricks that people use there since 2,000 years. There's nothing new. Yeah, it's a passive house, it's airtight, yeah. It's maybe probably one of the unique insulated building in all Africa, but okay, why not? But it's airtight, and we discovered that airtightness had much more impact in tropical climate than we have in cool climate or gentle climates. So the cooling demand and the dehumidification has been reduced or of a bit more than 70%, only because it's just a bit insulated and airtight. Of course, the sun blinds help. They are fixed. Nothing, no machine resists there. Anyway, there's no maintenance. Well, there is nothing. And actually, it was more difficult to do windows, Kalashnikov bulletproof, to make a passive house building there. And the other thing, yeah, it's under construction. But the funny thing is, the cost of that building, again, the cost, it's really annoying for us at the moment. We were, again, the cheapest, come on. So, and the other one didn't propose. Passive house, of course. Passive house in Kinshasa, come on, forget it. Not in Africa. But we discovered, because it's a passive house, we don't need only 30% of capacity for cooling and so on, but it's an embassy. In case of war or crisis, you have to double everything. They must be able to live 10 days complete autonomous with under attack. So, my God. So if you have seen the film Fargo and so on, so we're a bit like on that trauma. So it was possible, and we were the cheapest again. I'm a bit sad for that, but large scale. I don't know. So you see, we have we didn't practice enough. So if you come in June, 12th, 13th June at the New York Passive House Conference, we will present a large-scale renovation, retrofit, very large scale. So this is like a prequel. Of course, it's not very large scale. It's large scale for us, I know for you it's nothing. 65,000. This is from another architect. It's funny because it's an architect coming from Spain, and they're also in Belgium. They're doing a passive house without knowing it's a passive house. They just say, yeah, it's passive house, but they say, okay, oh, and what's your R value or your BTU? And say, BT what? Okay. But never mind, it's okay. So they have a tiny extra cost. They could have zero, but and we are doing another one that's 500,000 square feet, retrofitting. The social housing we are doing is under renovation now. It's a very dramatic neighborhood, building from the 60s. We have just removed now all the envelope, and we're going to start. So there's going to be a passive house renovation with kindergarten and so on. It's going to be even more than passive house. It's going to be a zero. We're going to present that in detail in June, in a month. That's our friends. It's called Altiplan. Okay, yeah, really, they're quite good. They had to renovate that building. It's almost over now, so that's building from the 60s. And they just reclad, it's completely almost over with raised suspended ceiling or activated ceiling and so on. They don't need all that, but they put it. Okay, so it's over capacity building, but why not? So it's funny that even the contractor, yeah, he did the blower door test and so on, but they put huge insulation, and they put 2 times too much insulation. It's full triple glazing. We don't need it. I'm going to show you in June. Half of the building could have been double pane. But okay, they did. Okay. Yeah, the question now is for retrofitting, because we know, yeah, new build.
So actually, we have seen 3 retrofit buildings, so it's clearly possible in Passive House to retrofit buildings. But I know, well, we've been in New York for just one day, and we were like looking at every building, and it's really amazing. You've got a landmark so important here of building. And so many people are preoccupied with the inside insulation. So I'll just show some, when this project is a former brewery, and it's a typical brownstone building, as you have many of them here. I won't enter into details, but here we had a huge insulation from the inside. It was some
R50 or R60.
R60, yeah, and so we put all this insulation inside, and we had to, work about the vapor migration and all how does it work with the water and stuff. We put waterproof, but air open, vapor open on the facade and stuff. And so, yes, we did this hotel room. It was about 150 rooms. It's really working really well, and you know what? It's also in Molenbeek. And after 1 year of monitoring, so you see, yeah, actually it's 170 room. It's about 600 to 700 people per day. And we had made a calculation, simulation, and we had 7.2 BTU square feet per annum. And so it was what we had in the simulation. And then we have seen in the real life that it wasn't even 7, but it was 6.2. So it was really impressive because it was less consumption of what than the one we expected. So either it was people were not showering or not buffering, or I don't know, or either it was just a very efficient building. So you imagine it's $3,500 a month for eating and warm water for 600 people a day. So here it's the building. We are not going into detail right now, but well, I'm sure there will be trainings and stuff around New York soon. But we did it for building before the 19th century, building of the 30s, building of the 60s. All you see there, it's retrofit building of the 80s. Imagine we have to retrofit buildings that are built that are so young, and it's incredible. And even we had some landmark buildings. Here it's also a protected Art Deco building that we have renovated like 3 years ago, and it's in work, and it's with huge inside insulation also. Here it's an office building also in Avenue Louise that we had a retrofit, and it was to Passive House, and it was also for minus 20% of the cost of a normal retrofit. So I leave Sebastian talking a little bit about practice.
Yeah, because the same question, and they're still there, even with the law we have, and most of the people doing that even without knowing it, but okay. But you know, our builders, are they able to do it? And you know, they're not that good. Designers, are they capable to make good, efficient buildings and so on? So, and all these new techniques and so on. What we discover, another thing that came from the market, because nothing comes from us, it's always with builders, craftsmen, and so on. We discovered that actually the market is always stronger in every sense, every direction. And if you don't change too much, it's okay. So I'm going to show you 2-3 details. In a month, it's going to be more for geeks, of course, in the New York Passive House. But this is what we learned in Germany. Again, I love Germany, don't worry. When you do a window triple pane, it has to be in the insulation, continuity, because of the isotherm, etc. Of course, if you don't do that, you're going to lose. It's because P value, there is a lot of heat is going to go out. Of course, they're absolutely right. And if you ask a consultant, it's his job to tell you that. But this is really, my God, you have to suspend with the structure and so on. So here, this is, when people say it's difficult, they are right, 100% right. Then there was a builder who said, look, this is a tiny building. There are maybe 10 apartments. Here, that was that project we did, it's 350 apartments. He said, you think I'm going to put 350 housing with times 10 windows, 3,500 suspended windows? Are completely out of your mind? Look, normally these windows on top, they are very heavy. We're going to put it on the concrete, so it's easy. And the same for the air barrier, air tightness. We put a membrane we use like in the 70s. It's the EPDM, so okay, just do it. And of course, they all fulfill the passive house calculation, both of them. Of course, when we do the C calculation value, we do that all intern. It's like funny. There is difference. Scientifically, it's right, there is a difference. So what? The difference is after 0.27 instead 0.03. Come on, 0.01? That's a difference? But please, this is for normal people. This is for, my God. But okay, the contractor builder was super happy because he had so much extra cost, so it's the best day in his life, okay? But come on, I don't say, but come on. The same here, that tiny building was also zero energy and so on. It's one of our first, so we did crazy details for the sun blinds and everything. You cannot believe it. Like here, again, the craftsman for steel, it's again his best day in life. Super extra cost because they told us, look, the heat want to go out because they're very naughty. They want to go out, so we're going to make them a very long path to go out. Okay, yeah, come on. But they had to execute it, really. And still today, I wonder how they did it. My God, my God, so it's crazy. And if you do that, of course, I would be against. But we did it, huh? My God. So when we are doing, you remember that building, we didn't have the same chance in here. All the clients, they are private. They said, look, come on, give me a break. Your thermal bridge, whatever, it's your problem. We love the design, but no extra cost and so on. And here, all these hanging elements, they are very heavy as me, one element. There are more than 2,000 thermal bridge. So you think we're going to have to put 2,000 fixed or structure like that? This is crazy. We can't do that. What we discover while we start insourcing all these tools and all this magic stuff, we discover in all that messy stuff, the only thing really has an impact is that white, tiny element. That cutting tiny element is like a PHID, it's a high-density plastic, a stupid plastic. So what we said to the builder here, we didn't say, well, we're going to make you cutting the thermal bridge and so on. No, we said, look, we give you a box of 100 of these tiny white plates, and you put them like that. Of course, in the calculation, there is small movement, okay? And they put it here, you see. They put hundreds of them. Of course, again, the craftsmen say, okay, that's the architect. What the hell is a bit, okay, but we're going to do it because. And they don't know why. And it's perfect, perfect, perfect. And that's done. So again, for the membrane, we're not against the membrane. We love it, pro-clima, and so on and so on. Once a builder came and said, come on, there are so many, it's a renovation. Do you think we're going to glue all these miles of membrane? Are you crazy? And they use a kind of special coating that you can spray or you can put like that. It's called blower-proof liquid. The first time they show us that, we said, oh, come on, give me a break. How can it work? We're specialists. But they did it, and we tested straight away. And oh my God, it was working. So another project we did is this one. It's over now for municipality. It's not a housing. It's a small office building. Okay, window. And here is that white painting. So the funny thing here, the subcontractor did the airtightness without knowing it's airtight. You just tell him, look, you see all the joint, they have to be white. You say, okay, yes, sir, I put it in white. We didn't ask even a price. You ask a price to put white zone? Where do you see that in the specification books? You can do it, but then you have money, you have cost. If you don't, you just say it's integrated in the job. So here, the guy, it's very funny. He's doing an airtightness. It's just white zone, okay, perfect. And it's working. Again, another surprise. When you see the failing factor, of course, we don't say that everything is okay in the beautiful world, like Walt Disney and so on. Of course, there are failings. And of course, there were some who failed the grant. And something it was a lot of money, $200,000, $1 million. So, but what we discover, that when you say, look, you have to pay attention, but okay, not like normal. We discover in all these buildings, all the region has a failing factor a bit less than 5%. So 5% of the builders can't do it. Well, they're just a bit above Passive House. Come on, it's not that dramatic, but and it's still like that today, designers, builders, and so on. So when you see all these, this is the exemplary program in 4 or 5 years. And when we ask in Austria, because they start before us, here they have 17,000 Passive House, and they have the same ratio. And the funny thing is, in all these builders we have, almost none of them had trainings. I'm sorry for the trainers. It's good to have trainings, of course. You sleep better and so on. But you can just a bit, I know that we have all example of a worker who was crazy and doing crazy things, but normally, come on. So, of course, in 2011, when all this call for tender, grant, and so on in the program of the region, very soon we saw arriving real estate or large scale, all the kind, and just friends were a bit geeks and flower power and so on. I love flower power, but and they wanted to have things, and one of the first question came out of the box is, but come on large scale, very, very large scale, it's not possible. So we did a huge study in 2011, a 2-3 month study with a builder, a project manager, a QS, a broker also, engineers and so on, like in real life. How can we do a skyscraper, a Passive House skyscraper for more than 2 million square feet? So we calculate normal skyscraper and a Passive House skyscraper. Hopefully at that moment we saw arriving a curtain wall. They were not funny curtain wall anymore. They were normal, like Wicon and so on. They were just good, just airtight, enough. And the funny thing, at that moment we discover, look, the extra cost could be, according to that study, 4%. And it's funny because in the Real Estate Federation, it was like a Bible for 2-3 years. It's 4%, can we afford it? And some say yes, and some say no. The funny thing, today we have skyscraper, who are Passive House, and the 4%, okay, that's a funny story. On reality, the same builder who did the study with us, he said, look, he didn't do the call here. He said, but if I would have done it, I would have an extra cost of minus 10%. What do you think? So this is, again, very funny. The market is stronger, it's much more stronger. If I give you 200 millions to build that, to renovate it, I put here 3 builders. What do you think? They're going to fight to have it. So what? 4% extra cost? Come on. Yeah, in the study. In the study. In reality, yeah. Yeah. One of the difference is, again, some builders found solution. What we discover, some of these builders, one of the one we use together, we have done already 10 projects together, is one of the builders who in-source himself also the PHPP and the thermal bridge calculation. Why? Because they don't trust consultant anymore. It's not that they're nuts or whatever, but a consultant, if I'm going to say, no, you have to do it that way. But they're not going to make 10 variants because it takes time, so on. But the builder, he does that himself. And then, for example, here, he said, look, there are miles of surface, of square feet of surface of facade. It costs money. What if I put a better window pane, but then I reduce insulation all over the facade? I gain more money here. I lose here a bit. So they fine-tune everything according what is best for them, because they know better than we. Like everybody does that. You do that normally. Today, when you have a big project, when you have to recalculate the foundation, the structure, and so on, and you do it more for techniques, HVAC and so on, you know, nothing works like foreseen. Anyway, it never works. So you have to redo it, and your subcontractors have to recalculate it completely. Anyway, so this is what you do now. Some of them do it for the physics, because they're more clever than us, really, much more. But the thing is, some autos buildings are not very sexy, not very attractive. You have to sell them sometime. And even because they're architects, we are in AIA, so we're going to talk a bit and end with architecture.
Yeah, I see you're boiling for questions, so I'll try to make it a little bit faster because we are losing time. So, as Sebastian told you, there are iconic architects that are going to build in Brussels, so they had to build Passive House. So here it's one of Jean Nouvel, here is Baumschlager and Eberle, former of OMA, and here it's Xavier de Gater, which has a dome tower with triangular window, why not? And yeah, all of them are constructed or under constructor. Here are other local celebrities that are our friends, and they're building passive house building, and with many different forms and aesthetic and so on. Here it's also one. Okay.
Yeah, in terms of design, this is just to show, because all this now it's normal. That's just an entry. We just submitted now for another embassy for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but with them we did already the trick. Oh, passive house on cold, passive house on hot. This is hot and dry, not humid. It's much more easy. And again, we discover in that case, airtightness is not that important. It's other things were more important, ventilation and sunblind and so on. So there we discovered that the cost is going to be, again, dramatically too low, please. So we say, okay, why don't we propose an embassy? And then normally it's going to be the first in the world. It's completely autonomous. So it's passive house, zero energy on the building, but completely autonomous for everything, either the computer, the coffee machine, everything, all is zero. It's too easy. We are in Morocco, a lot of sun radiation. We will see. But apart from that, that's all techniques. It was just a fun to come back to the old ancient design, a bit more interpreted in. So here, the twisted tower we did on the existing one for that big real estate company. It's called Fedimo or Befimo, is the same. We won another competition with them, and this is the sign of the times. Maybe some of them know MIPIM in Cannes, is the biggest real estate market in the world. And won a competition to them with them, and this project has been selected, and we were facing big architects like Ricciotti, Jean Nouvel, and so on. Mm-hmm. So it's a neighborhood, all passive house, of course, but actually this is now secondary. It's just a close to zero energy building, actually. Mixing housing and everything is close to 400 square feet. But it's funny because it's the first time that developer exists since I was not born. They were already there. But it's the first time they won an award at the MIPIM. So now they're really crazy in love with all this green stuff and so on. All the MIPIM, there are people from all over the world, from Mongolia, Russia, US, everywhere, Brazil, whatever, China, and so on. Everyone was green, super green, hyper green. Of course, no one is really, but never mind. Actually, this one is the real one. So everything's there, water, etc. So the question.
The question so for us, no, it's what's beyond passive house. So it's a little bit what's after Euclidean geometry. We've talked about structure just right now, and imagine Franco Gehry designing a building and not having a computer to go to calculate the actual structure of it. We are nearly at this kind of point here with all the tools that we have and that we can imagine the architecture to come. So here we, oh, it's new. Okay, it's different image. So you know, normally we build, we have building to have shelter, to have a sensation of comfort, of temperature, range, protection, and whatever. And the efficiency of the envelope is really important because you've got all this exchange, warm exchange, air exchange between inside and outside climate. So Passive House is about quality of the construction also and of the modelization. During the, you know, the modern time, we had all those technical system and you know, with warm heating and cooling air and the light and stuff. Rem Koolhaas used to call this space junk space, that you can have whatever is the envelope, you can compensate with technical support and technical design. What Passive House does is that it's as all those technical things were going from mechanical to physical. So it's a little bit like all was disappearing and going into the envelope, into a better insulation, into physics, into specificities. So all those tools we've talked about, I think it's not only about, you know, showing nice colored design. It's also about creating and inventing new architecture, new building, more resilient, that can go not only about isolation and everything, but also to regenerate the climate. So go further, having resilient building. And nearly here it's a reinterpretation of form and function follows climate. So that's what we really aiming to, and regenerative architecture. So I will pass very rapidly this because yeah. So you know, there is many ways of doing architecture, which we can be categorized in two different examples. The stacked deck. So you have all those functions and you pilot them and you hope that maybe it's gonna be a nice form in the outside, or you design a nice form and then you stuff the peaks. You put all the all the different functions inside of this beautiful form. So it's the same when you look at the modern construction. It was all about some technical invention. You know, within the glass, you couldn't have those transparency. Within concrete, nothing on the 5 points of Le Corbusier could have been done. So you needed this technical invention to get to a new architecture. So it's exactly the point that we are doing right now. We are at this point. We have technical possibilities, technical tools, and it's not only about energy or climate, it's also about imagining new architecture to come. So there are many people that are working on this, and some different here. You can. We are very inspired with references of Philippe Ram, who is really designing architecture with these tools, and not just about the images, but also about the sensation, the interior climate.
Actually, this building, it's based on just a heat exchange. It's a heat exchange building. And I'm going to end with this because this is where we are now. We are using parametric design as a show for example, for here, how to make it as a game again. So this simulation dynamic design with the parametric calculate more than 200 position of the sun blinds, and it gives the best option. The same now with, again, Jean-Paul and Christophe, we are doing in Lisbon, in a dry climate, renovation of a passive house building, close to zero. We use the trick, you know, those knees that kids plays with. In Lisbon, they have 7 hills. So we take the form of the 7 hills, we put it on these, like, knees, yeah? And that became the design of this, again, with the grasshopper, to have daylight use and so on, glaring effect. So this becomes, so the form came out of the mixing parametric. And this is one of the last project entry we did. It's a sports hall in the center of Brussels, so no facade, nothing at all, just the functions. So it was so cool to make a building without facade. So we used that parametric design again, but not only to put wood behavior of etc., but we cover it with grass, so it becomes like a valley. And actually, that was our submission. And it has to fulfill Passive House. We are under the law. So Grasshopper was used also to use all these calculation of solar radiation. And we ask him, look, put windows when we have less than 5 watt or 500 watts or 1000 watts. So the design actually at the end came out of the parametric design actually. You see it here. And for once, the competition entry the image we put is just a picture of that valley. Okay, and to end, so with Jean-Paul and Christophe and the developer, we created a think tank just to push those boundaries. So now we do building will not only have zero impact on climate, but regenerate it in one way or another. With, for example, here is another zero energy, passive house, of course, but we use a special coating for CO2 catalysis. Now we are working on a small, very small unit, completely autonomous for everything, water, cooling, everything, absolutely. For full year, you can live there and you have nothing. You just put it there, whatever it is. Another test.
And about FAST, the think tank, it's also, it's not only architects, it's architect, developer, and constructor you need together to think about projects.
Yeah, and to end, that was the thanks to RAM, we have to run. So RAM Koolhaas is a think tank, it's AMO, it's far more prestigious think tank. He wrote a leaflet 5 years ago about how can be energy efficiency and so on and so on. And for buildings, he said, but look, come on, there is a solution. It's called PassiveHouse somewhere there in Germany. This is why we thank him, definitely. That's our two office. Thank you.
We're going to have questions now, and I'd like you to speak into the microphone because we are being recorded, okay?
I was curious in the hotel project where you insulated on the interior, how did you deal with the slab condition, the thermal bridge of the slab condition?
This is why we are 20 to 25 kilowatt per hour and not 15, because we have heat losses all along. But when you put 1 foot insulation, it's enough to have more than, I think it's 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 12 Celsius, to avoid condensation risk under 60% air humidity. So we didn't have to cut the slab, and also because they are in concrete. But the other one, the Art Deco building you saw, the landmark, there was wood, a bit of everything. And in that case, we cut absolutely all the slabs, absolutely complete. So it depends. If it's concrete, and you recuperate a bit here, a bit there, so it's very easy.
So one of your early slides showed a dramatic change in square footage for passive house construction in 2011. But the law didn't change until 2015. What was the driver in 2011 that?
That was that program of exemplary buildings. So in 2007, the government said, well, this is where we met, and so it was like 15 years already running like those grants for solar panels and one, very boring. So they want to do something new, and said, we're going to test something. What if we give you $10 the square feet if you do as best as you can? They didn't ask, do passive house. They said, just do the best. We will see. And it's actually the market who came with passive house. And when they saw it, in the beginning, it was just houses or private. And in 2010 and 11, we saw arriving large-scale building, like 400 square feet and so on. And this is why, boom, it exploded. But it was voluntary. And most of them said, we're going to go there for the money. But why not, if they want? And it's based on this stock, because in 3, 4, 5 years, Brussels had a huge stock of local passive house project. And based on that, what we could learn, what was good and not good and so on, that decided, okay, now we can vote a law based on what we see. So when people ask, did you do feasibility study? Are we be able to have a law for all, mandatory? And the minister said always, no, we don't have no study at all. We just have a local stock. Look, 1 and 2 is cheaper. Oh, look. The design, some are hyper design. Oh, wow, so it's possible. So this is what, it was voluntary until, but it's based on this stock. This is how they could vote. Yeah.
Many people in our country live in suburban homes, the for suburban sprawl, and these homes are not energy efficient. Um, what would you suggest that people do when they renovate these homes, which are now 50 years old, 40 years old, maybe some of them are 60 years old, in order that they do become more energy efficient and maybe approach a passive house situation?
I knew you was asking that. No, it's not true. Um, the thing is, what we discover, the best thing is you can spare everything, whatever you do, but not a study from A to Z. So the first thing is, it's like the doctor. You ask a doctor, can be consultant or an architect, whatever, and he come to your house and say, look, what can we do now? And if it was to go to a complete zero energy building, what should we do? It doesn't mean that you have to do it straight away, but they make you study, like an audit, and what are the solutions? Because maybe you can just afford to replace one window or one roof. The thing is, the worst is if you change just one roof and you have to rechange it 10 years after or 15 years after. That's crazy. You cannot do that. So we do study like that. This is a building from suburbs, very old one, 200 years ago. So the study was from that energy efficiency here. That's a zero energy. Passive house is here. We saw that if you put insulation, better windows, whatever, what can you do? So it's like a from A to Z scenario. But we didn't tell them, look, you have to replace everything. Yes, on the study, this is what you can do. But actually, you don't have that much money. So you do where you want, whatever. And you can continue next year, in 10 years, in 20 years, I don't care. Or where you sell it to your children or to someone else. They can continue the story. So the thing is, I would just suggest to have a study from A to Z with some scenarios. What can you do? Because if you do one change, please don't redo it again. You change the windows, do it for once, and not start again within 25 years, I don't know. So that's a solution. And maybe it's going to be a solution to demolish the thing, but then you can calculate also the life cycle assessment, life cycle cost with the embodied energy and so on. That's another trick, a brighter vision. But this is the first thing, an audit, and see what you can change, you will see. And according to that, you do. And this is papers in our country. It stays with the notary. So when a property is sold, it's called the EPB. It follows. This studies follows the property, and they can continue the story. The worst is to have a building where our office is in a building. They changed all the windows 10 years ago. My God, you can do nothing with these windows. They have no chance to be one day even zero energy. No way. But invest a lot. It's a huge building. All the windows replaced for nothing. It's crazy. So it's continuing to mortgage investment and local stock. So we prefer to say don't do too much, but stop blocking your building. So just make a study, and then you see.
So you're saying windows and insulation, right?
Yeah, of course the roof has the most impact. Of course, then it's the window and so on. But maybe you don't have to change your roof now. But if you change your window for any reason, because one is broken, or because you want to put a greenhouse or enlarge, whatever it is the reason, then you should profit to that reason to make as good as it can be. And what should be that insulation if you do an extension of just the roof? I don't know. It's the insulation enough to allow you to go to a zero energy one day. So maybe it's going to be a 1 foot insulation, maybe half. You just make on calculation. It's an Excel, so you can change it 10 times if you want. It's so stupid. And then you choose, but it's up to you. You play. Yeah.
My question is about the project at the humid part. Which one was the most important part of the envelope, the infiltration, or the materials used? Which one was the more important thing to actually look at in that hot and humid climate?
In Kinshasa, the hot climate, the most important was first it was the design, those blinds. It was amazing, the impact reduction from 50% solar radiation reduced from 50 to 6% only solar radiation was coming to the building. And the second more impact was the air tightness. Because a classical building, you have to dry the air that comes through the ventilation, plus the one that comes to the leakage, so you continue dehumidifying all the city. That's crazy. So your machine runs for nothing. You have to dehumidify outside. So that was a surprise. We didn't know that. It's after when we did the simulation, it was like, we never heard. Yeah.
Sebastian, how would you describe the difference between Brussels Passive House and German Passive House?
More sexy. Super sexy. No. The thing is question of mentality. If you don't distress, there's no way that's going to work. But you know, on one sense, when I see the conditions where we were 5 or 10 years ago, actually, when I see New York, you have much better conditions than we never had, because your turnover is much more fast, so you can test quicker. Maybe you can fail quicker, but you can test it more rapidly, and it's straight away you can go to strong. This is all these buildings. It took years to build, and oh my God, it's not working. Oh, we should redo it. So it was very. We don't. Here you have a lot of things. You have LEED. You have the two Passive House Association. So there is a lot of better condition of a framework. And the other thing, you know, in Germany, they're fantastic because they set everything to make it work as easy as a stupid Excel. But when we did the project to see what are the successful processes in all Europe, Germans were with us. Passive House Institute, we are people from Norway, from Italy, England, Bulgaria, Latvia. We were 14. And it was a funny thing because it came out of them. It said that they have a kind of a way, they're more disciplined than us. In Belgium, we're more tricky, but they're disciplined. So if someone in an institute said, you have to do triple frame all over, it's all, yes, sir, and they all do it. If they suffer, they do it. It's a job with themselves, they joke on that. In Belgium, it's, yeah, come on, give me a break. Are you sure it's triple pane? And if you're sure, are you sure that you're sure? And I mean, because, sorry, I'm not going to pay more for what you think. So people are more pragmatic, like we normal are. So this is a big difference. And it's funny because in Austria, some parts are very faithful to that German. We even had some developers we bring to Vienna, and they met other developers who were proud. They suffer a hell for the high-rise. So, yeah, we had to do a shadow box system and so on. And they were so happy to have suffered that much. It was like, oh my God, you're all crazy here. So you see, really, and when you see, this is the way they talk now, so it's funny because they see all the way. It's the main difference. Don't repeat that. Huh? You should cut the video. Huh?
Yeah, do you?
You're gonna be.
Hi. Question here. So I live in an outer borough of New York City in a brick house in Queens, and my house has 0 insulation. So I have 2 bricks, a 3/4-inch airspace, and then plaster. Yeah. And what I've been told is if I over-insulate on the inside, that my brick facade is going to start to fall apart because it gets too cold. So what is your miracle solution for this house?
But again, I don't know your house, but I would just make a small calculation. But the funny thing is, now because we do all Passive House, we have seen with the FAST think tank, we've been visiting in Austria, Baumschlager neighborhood. They've done Passive House apartments in the 90s. They were among the first on large scale. And they've done now an office building. They have no insulation. They have no ventilation, and they fulfill the Passive House. So when we saw that, we said, yeah, again, come on, give me a break. But when we saw the trends, all the survey, computer survey, we saw, oh my God, it's working. So it has to be airtight. And the bricks, they use that 3 feet wide, like middle age. And that was enough to cut its nice air value.
Right.
But the thing is, because these bricks are with a lot of holes, so that helps. It's not really insulation. And the ventilation, they use like with CFD, computer free dynamic simulation, 3-dimensional matrix, to see how high have to be the floor to have like a CO2 stack from the top, and windows opened only when necessary, and when it's a bit too cold, so you're never under the critical CO2 and so on. So again, the answer here is put your building in that small calculation, and let's see what's happening. The same in the WUFI, you can see here, how it behaves on temperature on the inside of your wall in extreme condition, and you test. And maybe you have to do, I don't know, an extra installation, or maybe not, and so on. But you have these tools. They are toys, really, just toys. That's another thing.
Yeah, I think I've been told I can improve the situation, but if I put more than an R10 inside, then my brick is going to start falling apart.
But the best, because well, we can do it apart if you want, but if you're going to be in June, we're going to explain you how to do it. That product, that airtight, waterproofing, but open for vapor. This is hyper important. Your wall have to breathe. It's absolutely necessary, because if you have a R which is too much efficient, you can have water who stays inside the wall, and in cold conditions, it's going to turn into ice. Ice takes 7% more volume than
Freeze
water,
thaw, yeah.
and you have this. So here, you have ice that works completely. So you have to reduce the water absorption, is the A factor, water absorption per meter square. And to reduce it, again, there is a small, it's a pipe, you can test it and so on. But in June, we're going to develop that in the conference, or I'll explain you here. But again, this product has been used 50 years ago in Germany. Again, it's not witchcraft, it's physics. We have to come back here for that.
I think, unfortunately, we have to end now. The building shuts down at 8 o'clock. So thank you all for coming. I think we learned a lot tonight. A big round of applause for Sebastian and Julie.